I walk with my back to the sea, horizon straight ahead. Wave the sea away and back it comes. Step and I slip on it. Sit and it's underneath, seeping and shaming me. Crawling in my journey's footsteps. When I stand, it fills my bones. Daytime, it drags me to the moon, even with feet of solid ground and with prospects ahead. It is there, under the paving stone, on the horizon. And then I slip. Through the cracks I sink to be shamed by the sea. Nighttime, I am the sea, and if I walk from shoreline to coast, it will fill my shoes, washing my journey away.
So first of all, thank you for doing this.
You're most welcome.
And from reading your book, the very first question I'm going to ask you, I had to ask it, is where were you born and raised, and how has that shaped the person that you are today?
Okay. So I was actually born in London, and I have a couple of really vivid memories of how it has influenced me. One was that up until I was about 8, I don't remember anyone mentioning the word Montserrat. And that's in my book, Volcano. There was no mention of the word Montserrat. I didn't see myself as British or Caribbean or Montserratian or anything. I was just a kid. But there are a couple of things that prompted my understanding of who I was. And it's in Volcano. The fact that when I said I was from Montserrat, people laughed. When I discovered I was my parents from this place called Montserrat, people laughed. And something that I was taught from my father was that if you imagine a 100-yard sprint, the black kid was at least 20 yards behind the starting line. And that to achieve, I had to be twice as good as the other kids in my class who were all white or English kids. And that has struck with me and motivated me. I wanted to be excellent. And it was just that statement that my father made about being behind the starting line and having to be much better that helped me to have a kind of internal locus of control. Nobody had to tell me to do schoolwork or to study hard, or nobody had to tell me or ask me, what did you want to do? I remember when I was about 16, in fact, even though I went from England to Montserrat, then back to England, I remember sitting and hearing a lot of the black girls, really negative, very toxic, and very anti-teacher, and anti-school and anti-authority, and I was thinking, hell no, I have to make a difference in the world. I did not know what kind of difference I wanted to make, unlike some people who said, I'm going to study law, I'm going to be a nurse. I didn't have any clue what that was going to be. But I remember things like the sus law, and I was thinking, hell no, I'm not going to be a dropout. Hell no, I am not going to be allowing the teachers, some of whom would say to you, when you said, I want to go to university, go to university. And I think that when I referred to England as a dry period, I wasn't really being fair, because on reflection, England made me a warrior. I was like, no sir, I didn't even want my child brought up here, because I thought they would destroy him as a black man. And England gave me that kind of consciousness. I remember marching. I remember freeing Mandela as a young woman. I remember going to every black British theatre experience and supporting Munira and Black Theatre Collective and Black Audio Film Collective. And I was just like, Now I'm older, I can say thank you, England, for making me, I was awoke long before these Americans even knew the word awoke. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah. So I took the best, which was, I love the theatre, obviously. I love poetry. I love the arts. I love all of that, dance. But I took the worst and I said, I'm going to make something. I'm going to make a difference in the world. I don't know how. I remember I would follow Steel Pulse. I would follow Linton Kwesi Johnson. I remember when Mutabaruka came to England, I was like, I can't miss that man performance, right? I was woke long before there was a sense of, you know, of what woke really meant. And I feel that that helped me as a woman, as a daughter, as a mother, and now as a grandmother. That British experience, that people coming and touching your hair. Let me tell you, when a woman did that to me and a boss one time, I'm not a fighter, I wanted to kill her. Like, you don't touch my hair. So now I have a granddaughter who's dark-skinned and beautiful. I'm teaching her because England made me aware of those things, you know? So it's upsetting to me that there's a lack of awareness now among, because by the time I was 9, I was aware. And when I was 16, I was definitely aware of what I was going to do. And England helped to shape that consciousness. So when there were kids that were wasting time, I didn't have time to waste time. So I'm grateful to England for that.
Okay. Well, what that leads me to is, obviously you went and lived in Montserrat.
Mm-hmm.
What influence did that have on you? Did it even enhance it? What did it do for you?
Oh, and then I saw a world where there was no racism. I saw a world where everybody was like just kosher, mixed race. There wasn't even a word called mixed race. My friends who were white or who were mixed race, whatever that meant, they were just Montserratian. I was like, it's only when I come back to England I say, wait, them is mixed race, them is half caste. They would never call that in Montserrat. So I felt like my parents, and I'm grateful to both of them, gave me the best of both worlds, right? I remember when Martin Luther King died, you know, I was at school, I was at secondary school in Montserrat, and I was thinking, because of my parents and the way they brought us up, that consciousness was doubled. You understand what I'm saying? And also, I really appreciated things. The first time I saw the sea, we were going from London, I think, to Southampton, to Dover or something, and I was terrified of the sea. Every child in Montserrat knew how to swim except me. Every child understood when it was going to rain except me. Every child recognized the smell of sulfur except me. I was like, wait, I got fixed up. So I remember between the age of 13, 14, 15, we used to hike around Montserrat and just understand the Soufriere and the waterfall and the volcano. And that really enriched me also. So I kind of knew that coming back to England was going to be temporary. Oh, yeah. I mean, I had no choice as a child. The parents tell you, you have to come back to England, you come back to England. But I knew the first chance that I got, I would leave. And I took the chance when one day I realized black boys aren't doing so well here. And I had a black male child. I was like, no, sir. You got to get out of this country. So that's what I did. And now I'm older, I am appreciative of the lessons I learned from growing up in a very toxic environment.
So you're involved in the arts. You talked about going to see Linton Kwesi Johnson, Steel Pulse, a whole range of
I
writers.
was crazy.
Okay.
I was just like a groupie.
So you was probably at every event. You was probably at places like Burglar Overture and
Peter Tosh
okay.
and his little bicycle, his unicycle, like his one wheeler. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
And spending a lot of time in Centerprise
Hackney.
and in Hackney and the John LaRose's bookshop, New Beacon. Let me tell you, I was hungry. I was like, I had to fill myself up, because to me the education system is woefully inadequate.
Is that in Britain or is
In
that
Britain.
Is that anywhere or?
I would say in Britain it's woefully inadequate. I did an English and theatre degree, and I never read a black book.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So I understand that.
So I had to educate myself, you know, and I remember attending a conference with my cousin David Edgecombe, who's also a lecturer in the theatre. He's at the University of the Virgin Islands, and I remember meeting these men that you just read about: Kamal Brathwaite, Tom Austin Clark. I was a little girl, you know. I was like, oh my God. And that's when the hunger was intensified.
A catalyst.
It was like, man, I got to read all. And so I was encouraged to start writing, actually. And the response wasn't great. I don't think I was particularly good at it. But I knew that one day I would have the right story to tell. And so I didn't push it. I became a teacher. I was happy to teach English and drama. And then when I went to Montserrat, I was happy to be involved in the arts. I formed a theatre company. We started doing plays. We did Moon and Rainbow Shaw. We did Old Story Time. I just started, and I became more hungry. But the goal was really never for me to become a writer. I have to tell you that. The goal was, can I do whatever it takes to make a difference in the world? Whether that be teaching, whether that be acting, whether that be directing a play, whether that be running the drama club at secondary school. It was for me like I was constantly envisioning what medium to use to do this making a difference thing. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I did act as well. And I did direct. And sometimes I did performance poetry. But it was always, this is what you want to do now, or this is what you want to do now. You know? I just feel like I can't be put in a box. I felt kind of like I could do whatever I wanted. Within the arts, within education. For me, I'm an educator, first and foremost. I've done secondary, I've done college, and now I'm at the University of the West Indies. And I've only been there, almost 6 years. I would say that it's been a challenge for me, because academia is very different to college, which is very different to secondary school. But trying to get me to write is not a problem, because you have to write to get tenure and all that stuff. I'm not motivated by that. I'm motivated, as I've always been from a child. Can I make a difference if I write this? So yeah. So I just like all over.
You talk about making a difference, so I was going to ask you, why do you write? But obviously why you write is to make a difference. Are there any other reasons that come to mind?
I realized recently, like when I said to you, I've given away 20 books and I'm never going to make any money, I still have to pay for them, otherwise my son will have me. I wanted to create a legacy for my grandchildren. And I also don't want people to forget there is an island called Montserrat. I have some Caribbean friends and they tease me. They say, wait, Montserrat still exists? I thought y'all there? Y'all there? And then others are like shocked when I tell them there are only 5,000 people there. And I have 3 major pieces of writing and they're all about Montserrat. And I'm unapologetic about it. Montserrat may only have 5,000 people currently in there, but I understand. I mean, I don't know how accurate this is. There are over 80,000 Montserratians living in the diaspora. And some of them have had terrible loss. Some had loss from Hugo, 1989. I was in Hugo, by the way. I'm a child of disaster. I'm a product of disaster. But you know, so I feel that young experience of meeting all those writers and then finally really getting to know them on a more personal level, really sitting and talking with someone like Earl Lovelace, really sitting and having lunch with Kamal Brathwaite, that crystallized it for me. Kamal said, Yvonne, why aren't you writing about the volcano? When he met me, I was a fractured piece of self because you've lost everything. And people said, come back to England. I was like, it's harder if you don't come back to England because, you know, you can go to Social Security and the dole and all those things and get health benefits, I think, or housing. And a lot of Montserratians did that. Not me. I was not doing it. It was harder to go to Barbados. But you know what I found? When Kamal told me to write, I did start to write, but I started to write as a journal, and it wasn't for publication. It was very personal, and I took my time. I was in no hurry. I was just journaling. People underestimate the effect of post-traumatic stress syndrome on Montserratians. I think I was traumatized for many years, but I was so hell-bent on working hard and getting my act together and making sure that my son was taken care of. I never stopped to take care of myself. And I had like 100 jobs. And I was a hustler. If somebody called and said, hey, Yvonne, you know anybody who could iron tablecloths? I have a big wedding. I was like, I could do it. I understood what humility meant. Someone called me once and said, oh, they're looking for some people to help do some stock taking at this mall. I'm like, yeah. You know, do private lessons. You know what I'm saying? I would just do it all, you know, and I had so many amazing opportunities. And then I learned that Caribbean people are one. The kind of love and affection and regard and respect and care and concern that I got from Barbadians was like overwhelming. We're all from the same place, and we're all from no place and everywhere. There's no Caribbean person that could say, I am solely Bajan, because them grandmother come from Jamaica or them auntie come from Montserrat, you know? And so I grew such gratitude for these people that just embraced me and provided me with opportunities. I said I'm gonna finish the book, Kamal. He's like, you gotta finish the book. And so when I presented it for a local award, which is one of the biggest literary awards in Barbados, and I won, I was like, okay, I need the money. But then People Tree Press approached me, you know. It was so bizarre. Somebody told them about the book, and then they were in Barbados, and Jeremy is doing great work. He's doing amazing things for Caribbean writers and Black British writers. He's like, are you interested in, I'd love to see a manuscript. And I was like, but I'm not a writer. Because in my mind, I was just writing a journal for therapy. And then I said to him, I'll make a deal. If my son, who had not read it, approves of it, then I'll publish it. So I gave it to my son. He approved of it. And lo and behold, I became a writer. But I'd had stuff in anthologies before, little things, you know. But I don't think I really fought to perfect my craft until I really sat down and said, but wait, Yvonne, you can write. You can write. And I remember a very, very famous writer, I'm not going to say his name on camera, said to me that when he looks back on the early work, he's like, you've written such rubbish. But he said, no, he has to stop himself from saying that because you grow. And where you are at when you write at 20 is not where you're going to be at when you write at 60. So I challenged myself to write a play as part of the biennial slavery, 200 years of slavery, I can't remember. And I took the play to Trinidad, and someone was in the audience who was editing a collection of, he was looking for plays by women. He's like, why are women not writing plays? And I sent him the manuscript. When he saw after he saw the live production, I sent him the manuscript, and he said, I have some notes for you. Daryl, he sent me about 4 pages of notes. I said, what? I can't deal with this. He didn't like the title. He didn't like this. He questioned this line, and so it went. And I said, Yvonne, you said to yourself when the volcano stripped you of everything, you're going to grow in humility. And if you're going to grow in humility, take the man 4 pages of notes and fix up the play. So I said, take the man's 4 pages of notes and be humble. And I did. The first thing he hated was the title, but I dealt with the title last. And I took the notes, and the play, which was initially called Voices in Exile, what a cliche, became Blue Soap. Because when I was a child and my paternal grandfather died, my family might be vexed, but this is the truth. They took blue soap and bathed the man's body. And they also took the rest of the blue soap. Now, I can't recollect whether it's the same blue soap or they cut the soap, but either way, they washed all the Grand Picnic them with the same blue soap. And that was very significant for me. Blue soap is washed, is used to wash the dead. It's what is used to wash white clothes. So later on when my students and I were doing a play about bleaching, a big phenomenon among us people, a big phenomenon, bleaching. And I hear that the children put blue soap on their face. I did mortified. So I've written this play. It's about art and artists and the way artists are treated and disrespected. And it's called Blue Soap because I conjure up, Lord, the Christian's going to hate me. I conjure up spirits who speak to what we need to do to protect the artists. And as they come on stage, they wash their hands with blue soap. So it's an interesting play, and it did actually get published in a collection edited by Royal Gibbons, an amazing theatre person in his own right in Trinidad. And that's the other blessing. God placed these amazing people in my life. Royal Gibbons, they sent me the 4 pages of notes. And but every time I've written, it hasn't been because I wanted to be a writer. It's because I wanted to say something important to people about our story, our narrative, and how we need to write our own stories and critically evaluate ourselves as Black people. So even with the work I haven't had published, my theatre work, a lot of it is about questioning, consciousness raising, advocacy. I did a play recently called Scars Beneath the Sun, and bleaching and Brazilian butt lifts are a major thing. Lord have mercy, like surgery, and people are deliberately going, young, beautiful Black women. And then the students and I started interviewing women, and we started finding out things like, well, first of all, I never even knew who Black China was. I said, who is Black China? Who is Rob Kardashian? I was like, so teaching keeps me in touch.
Yeah, with the most current.
So I'm like, what a thing. And Nicki Minaj and all these amazing, talented Black women who are doing something to themselves, and it's really affecting and infecting young women in the Caribbean all over. With this idea of beauty, I'm like, it's something I'm still grappling with. I don't know if I have all the answers yet, but what I do know is that when something bothers me, either I'm going to create a piece of theatre, or I'm going to research it, or I'm going to read, or I'm going to create an original work. And I I've always surrounded myself with people who will critique me and give me input, and I'm not afraid to learn at this stage of my life. So when I've been struck by grief on a very personal level, my first short film was about grief. I thought, do I want to write about grief? Or do I want to put it on the screen? Which one do I want to do? And so I said, well, I don't know nothing about television, so I better go and do a film course. I was the grandmother in the class, happily, 20-year-olds, and I said, okay, I'm gonna learn how visual storytelling. I need to learn about it. And I'm here this weekend. I've been nominated for best direction and best fiction, for my very, very first ever short film.
That's excellent.
But for me, I'm a constant learner. Sometimes I think my brain will turn to mush because I'm constantly like, I don't know that. If I don't know it, I have to learn it. And my students, whether when I was teaching here the same, and in Montserrat the same, and in Barbados, always felt I'm inspiring, because I'm always saying, I don't know the answer, so let's go find out together. And I think once we had to label ourselves, what kind of lecturer are we? And people put expert. And I was like, facilitator. Even if I know lots more than my students, I'm a facilitator. I think we must allow students to construct knowledge for themselves. I cannot be one of those teachers that just, like you have.
You're spoon feeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't allow you to develop a consciousness where you find your own identity. Yeah.
So in the last play we did, the girls strip.
Okay.
That was a process. How do we feel about our bodies? And then I would share my story, and they would share theirs, and we would talk about. I talked to them about being called a wog at school, or being. They still call people wog about here?
I haven't heard that word for a long time. What I will say is, obviously, racism hasn't gone away. We know that. So I'm not going to act like we're living in a pure environment.
I was very naive. I was very naive until Brexit. I was here 3 years ago, and I was like, what's going on with England? I was confused. So I think of myself as a facilitator. I think of myself as a constant learner. Yes, I did education. My PhD is in education, actually. And I also try to think about how to improve schooling for my own students. And
your grandchildren in mind.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think children need experiences. Yeah.
I have a question. So, apart from getting that enriching experience of seeing everybody in authority being a black person, what do you think the Caribbean gave to your son? Because, you can get education from anywhere. And I know you might say, okay, CXCs are better than GCSEs or whatever. But what do you think the curriculum gave
I don't think it's the curriculum that gave him
not
that.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just your son, but just
I
that
think the
generation.
hidden curriculum,
Okay.
the informal curriculum, gave him confidence. He walked like a black stallion.
Okay.
And I don't see much of that happening around here.
Okay.
He walks with confidence. When I see my son, I remember him saying once, he's a science, he majored in sciences actually, but he decided to do a creative writing class with when he was at college, and he said, Mom, it's amazing. I'm the only person who knows Lovelace's work and Kamal Brathwaite's work, and I'm the only person that realized that George Lamming is still alive.
He is.
Very much so. And he said, thank you, Mother, for bringing me to Barbados. He said he realized it was a hard decision because we didn't have family there. But he benefited, just the idea that he could be at a Kamal Brathwaite 70th birthday party and talk to him in person enriched his life. Just the idea that I could say to him at 17, yeah, you can get the car, you pass your test. I wouldn't do that in England. This crazy place. And say, go, yeah, you can go out with your friends. Here's the car keys. That confidence, you know, he gets to meet academics, artists, artisans, fishermen, farmers, carpenters, regular black people doing everything, doctors, he gets to meet, they're not far removed. He has choices, yes, we know that there's an increase in crime in the Caribbean. There's no doubt about that. It's very disheartening, it's very discouraging, but we got to kick some doors down. We got to deal with poverty. We got to deal with inequities still, gender inequities, for example. We got to deal with early sexual activity of our children. I have done a lot of work in HIV and AIDS education in Barbados. We have to deal with sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual molestation of our young people. We got to make sure that there's legislation in place. So I think a lot of my work is activism in a way, because I think I did 4 years of just HIV and AIDS performances. Just each year we write a script, cast actors. It's a difficult space, but it's a space where I think you can make a difference. I think if I had stayed in London, I would have made a difference. I'm a non-Barbadian and I feel I make a difference. I've been involved with the development of curriculum in theatre for the region, for the entire region, at both the CSEC, which is your GCSE, and CAPE, which is your A-level. I am currently the chair of the syllabus for CAPE Performing Arts. I was a chief examiner for theatre at CSEC, your GCSE, for many, many years. The networking, I've learned there's just one Caribbean. And it's a beautiful Caribbean.
I wanted to move on to Nomad. So why Nomad? Why that name? Why this book?
You asked me hard question.
Oh, got to ask that question. It's right. It's staring me right in front.
Right. So let me tell you about Nomad. When I was about 58, I decided I'm going to have this big party and give everybody a copy of my anthology of poems. I ain't got no poems, but I have this in mind. And I have a couple of poems in Charting the Journey, which is published by Sheba Feminist, and little bits here, little bits there, and I'm putting them all together, and I'm going to publish them, and I'm going to give everybody a gift. But then, that little that humble thing I told you about, I say, let me give this to someone to read first. The feedback was not good. I want you writers out there to know you need to have critics. Not mummy, not daddy, not best friend, not husband. Real critics. So I gave it to this person who I had the highest regard for. And it was not good. And he sat me down after he had the manuscript for about a few months, and he said, Yvonne, what's the narrative you want to tell? And I said, what narrative? I just want to publish a book and give it to my friends for my 60th birthday. He said, Yvonne, chop. And I went home and I took his words very seriously, and I read over the poems, and I said, yeah, he's right. This is just a bundle of poems put together. Then 2 of my friends died.
Oh, okay.
And that week I went to 2 funerals. And I came home from the first funeral and looked at the poems and started removing what I thought was utter crap. He had said I could rewrite or look at this line, but I took out the ones that were crap. And something he kept saying, what's your narrative? What's your narrative? What's your narrative? And I said, you've been here 23 years. What is your narrative, Yvonne? And I said, I miss Montserrat. I have a longing for Montserrat. My friends are scattered all over the world. And I don't know if I'm going to remain in Barbados. And I wrote the first poem and sent it to my friend, associate I would say, but fine editor if you want to get your work looked at properly. He said more of this. And as I started to write, I began to feel this longing for Montserrat. I began to think about, it was like I just started writing this grief-filled kind of poetry, which don't really make anybody cry, I don't think. And then I sent the first 12 poems to this to Robert Sandiford. I'm going to mention his name because he deserves to be mentioned. And I sent 12 to Kamal Brathwaite. And Kamal Brathwaite wrote me back one long letter. Why are you hiding this stuff? When you start write this, what's going on with you? I need to see the whole collection. I need the manuscript. And I had a title, and the title was Fragments. He write, what foolish title is that? You is not writing no fragments. This whole work you're writing. And I said, Nomad. I was born in London. I did spend 2 years in Gibraltar, by the way, as a small child. I went back to London. I went to Montserrat. I went back to London. I went to Montserrat. I came to Barbados. Where is my end? You know, Stuart Hall talks about that. All of us are from some other place. And I said, I don't think I'm going to end up in Barbados. It hit me when I was writing the poems.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I love Barbados, but I'm not sure. Because I feel like if I have to make a difference in the world, can I really stay in one place? So Nomad came. You know how, as an educator, I realized that some students learn sequentially and some learn globally. Some learn in a very cognitive way and others learn in a more effective way. These poems, I don't know where they came from. I didn't even, in fact, I didn't set out to write poems because I felt like I was told by at least 2 people, you can't write poetry. And all of a sudden, the minute I started to not try to write poetry, the poetry came. And I remember when I did A-level literature at Haunted School for Girls, we were taken to visit Keats's house. And in Keats's house, they have these letters. And the letter that I remember to this day, I was 18. If poetry come not as easily as leaves to a tree, it had better not come at all. So you hear how the English education system affect me. And these poems, which have been redrafted, came so easily I was scared. I was like, Yvonne, but you're not a poet. I am a poet. Yeah, I'm a poet. I'm a writer. And it just came. And then because of Kamal's, like, in fact, he wrote me this another long letter, and part of it is for me is personal, so I haven't shared it in terms of the book. But there was one thing that I shared, and that was that Nomad is the love and lover of Volcano. And that kind of crystallized it for me. And then I said, I can send it to some publishing houses. And before I looked around, House and His, it was like, yeah, we'll publish your work. I was like, really? And so one of the things I want to say to writers is that publishing is both hard and easy. I didn't set out to find People Tree Press. I didn't really set out to find House of the Hesse. I just sent it to them as a teaser, testing the water kind of thing. And I know that some people are very discouraged because they haven't been published. But honest to Jesus, he's like Rihanna. Hey, you know how I get published? Because I had a story that was important, though. I think that Nomad is important.
I've got like 2 more questions left. The first one is how important, considering because of Africans being enslaved in the Caribbean and then emancipation and even dealing with independence and all these things, a lot of our culture has been oral because of restriction, and then we entered the education system, then we was able to write and have our own writings like you do. How important in this current moment of time with all the things we have access to digitally do you think is telling our story and archiving our materials? How important do you think that is to the Caribbean, especially as I went to St. Lucia and the woman said to me, I said to the guy he should write a book or something about his father who went to live in French Guiana and went back to St. Lucia. And I said you should write a book, but the woman went, yeah, you can write a book, but most people are looking at things visually. So how important is it to archive stuff? And what format do you think it should be delivered in?
I think it's really, there's a lot of things. I get pained when people don't produce books. And I do have a Kindle, but that's only because when I'm traveling, I don't want to walk with a big book. The death of books is very upsetting to me because it seems like there's a death of books.
I thought that for a while, but I don't think there is.
Okay, I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm really, because I buy books, right? I don't buy newspaper because I'm concerned about trees, and I also don't buy newspaper because they're too right wing. Can I say that on camera?
Well,
If you
want to take it out, just in case,
no.
You know, the Nation News might not want to publish you anymore.
Right. Kind of right wing, on right wing, not just in Barbados, they're right wing in England too. If I go back to Montserrat, how are people going to know about Montserrat if we never write about Montserrat? If we never produce films on Montserrat, if we never produce songs on Montserrat, if we don't do research on Montserrat. Do you know how many people have written about Volcano? I was kind of scared the other day when I did a search and found that people are actually writing academic work based on Volcano.
Your book goes into a lot. It doesn't just cover
It's a
Montserrat.
small book.
It's a small book, but it doesn't just cover Montserrat. You cover some stuff in the US, you cover some stuff in the UK, you cover different people's emotions, you cover stories that you were told, you cover your own personal story, you're covering like layers of your family. There's a lot in that. And
all I was trying to do was just get some peace for myself. And Montserratians will write me and tell me, oh my God, I read your book and I really love it. And it speaks to me. I found a review by a non-Caribbean African person, and it blew my mind.
I think I saw
on Facebook.
Yeah.
I was like, who is you to write this review? It was amazing. People, I think we don't write about loss, and we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot through slavery. We've lost a lot through colonialism. We've lost a lot during the indentureship period. We've lost a lot through colonialism. We've lost a lot as a result of natural disasters.
Abaco, what have they lost recently? Even
everything.
It just reminds me of Montserrat.
Everything. They've lost everything, right? When Hugo came, there was nowhere to run. We slept in my car. There was nowhere to run to. Everybody's house was gone, right? Roof was gone. The houses were standing in some cases, but everybody's roof was gone. So where you was going to run to hide, except in the car? I was in a cupboard with 5 other people the night when Hurricane Hugo hit Montserrat. If we think about Schindler's List, how do we know what's going on? How did we know what was going on? Schindler's List, which deals with the Jews and the Nazis in the concentration camp and this man who manages to get these children away. We have got to document. Our children came from somewhere. They didn't just come from Barbados. They came through the Middle Passage. Because how are we going to stop our children, our girls, from having butt lifts? How are we going to stop our children from having early sexual activity? And how do we explain that activity if we're not going to write the things down? I think it's important that they have a sense of that we deal with loss, grief, and trauma. We are not good at it. We sweep it under the carpet. The Me Too movement is interesting, because I can say that the minute I spoke to a girlfriend of mine and told her what someone did to me at 15, she had a story. The next girl had a story. Everybody had a story. And some people are like, oh, but it happened to you. It happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I believe all of the stories. Yeah, one or two girls may have lied. Because our silence, our communal silence, has allowed these men to get away with it.
Very true.
But the communal silence comes out of fear. Fear of people saying, oh, she did to force rape. You know, we love to say that.
Yeah, that's a really bad thing to say as well.
You know. Or she may look film. She womanish. I've heard all of these comments. You understand? It's very distressing.
It is.
So we've got to archive so that we can get some healing. When people read Volcano, they tell me they get healing.
I think that's partly because a lot of people haven't discussed it, and when you, for some reason, even though there might be people around you, and you saw them go through it, sometimes you think they're not thinking about it as well. So,
but I didn't think about it for many years.
So those people must have thought to themselves, okay, well, this is someone that feels exactly how I do. So even Alex Wheatle, the author, talks about how much that he was a person that was unfortunately abused when he was younger, and he talks about how his writing is cathartic. It's helped him.
Right.
Yeah.
So the writing has been cathartic for me, definitely. And I know that there are going to be some people who are uncomfortable with me talking about it. Well, let's just move on. You left a long time ago. I guess what I would say is that about 4 years ago, I went to Montserrat for the 20th anniversary, and I saw big men crying when they were doing their personal testimonies about the volcano. I did a concert. I saw people 20 years later when I was interviewing them about talking about, because what I did was that we did a concert, we had some performances and testimony, poetry kind of thing. Policeman crying 20 years into the experience. How do we get to stop speaking about it? We haven't even dealt with slavery. So a Barbadian woman read my book and she wrote me and she said, Yvonne, I feel like your guts is in this book. This book is better than watching a newscast or photographs.
Absolutely. It kills it. That's out front, because your emotions are not there. You're not reporting, you're exposing a lot.
Right, and I said, thank you. She's like, I don't know how you wrote this. She was referencing Nomad, particularly. And I said, thank you. And I said, and to think that I couldn't write poetry. The minute I stopped thinking about writing poetry and just writing the narrative, it was like exactly how Keats had said, you know. And I had a great editor, and I'm very grateful that I still learnt, you know, that wasn't the right word, or maybe do you want to think about this phrase some more? And I've benefited from having amazing mentors, and I don't see me ever not having a mentor. And I want to encourage artists to have mentors.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be about a woman who was determined to make a difference in the lives of everyone that she taught, that she met, the way I've just met you, and that when my grandchildren are asked, who was your grandmother? The person and they say Yvonne Weekes. The person gonna say, yes, I remember her. She taught my daughter, or she taught me, and she did an amazing play. Man, that poem she wrote about the volcano, that's what I want them to, that's what I want my legacy to be. That's all. Doesn't matter, rich fame is not important. See this lady here? I think she's my family. I think, but you know the whole of Montserrat is related, right? That's what they say. But I don't eat red meat anymore. But she used to make the most amazing goat water. The goat water is a national dish. And let me tell you, other people around the Caribbean would like to say they can make goat water. No, sir. Montserratians are the only people that can make goat water the way this woman made goat water. And it's as a national dish of Montserrat. And when I was a child, my paternal grandmother, Aunt Kate, when they used to have St. Peter's Anglican Bazaar, she used to make goat water in a big tin pot, and I just loved it. And this lady carried on the tradition. I know she's since passed, but it reminds me of Montserrat in a way that no other food reminds me of. And the smell of cloves reminds me of my childhood. And I always associate cloves smells with Montserrat. So I know in Barbados, and not just Barbados, most of the islands, people put cloves in ham. But cloves reminds me of Montserrat. That's the smell of it. Because you put it in this little cotton piece of fabric. You put all the seasoning in a little cotton thing. And you put it in the water, and it goat water reminds me of Montserrat. The evergreen tree for me is like, I really thought nothing could have destroyed the evergreen tree. I don't know what the state of the evergreen tree is now, but I guess it's gone. That's where people used to just hang out. I learned a lot about Montserrat, about the past, by just hanging out there. And it was a place for young and old, you know? And I think that's one of the things that I'm terrified has gone. That generational thing where I'd listen to like Mr. Watts and these older men talk about Mr. Bramble, who was the first chief minister of Montserrat. You learned so much of Montserrat's history and people would drink a beer, have an ice cream or eat some chicken and just chat, discuss, ventilate, hang out. We don't have that anymore, you know? Everything is scattered. There's no central space. I know that there are plans to build a new town, but I think that this is irreplaceable. And what saddens me is when I did the 20th anniversary, a lot of children who were born way after the volcano have no idea that this place really existed. Nobody tells them that Montserrat was this amazing space, an amazing space where Air Studios and Earth, Wind and Fire come and make music, and Beatles and Sting come and make music. No one told them this is an amazing space where we had the best CXC results ever, you know? And that saddens me, and I really hope that can be fixed. I think the other thing, the thing that I miss too, man, guys used to hang out here and play dominoes, you know, serious licking dominoes. You pick up a taxi here. No, I don't even know where people go get a taxi, but it was easy to get a little taxi, you know. Yeah, it's heartbreaking really to think that Montserrat has been 2/3 of the island has gone. But I think that's why it's important for us to tell stories, to make sure Montserrat didn't begin in 1997.
Of course.
Black people didn't begin when slavery happened. And that's the danger of not telling the story. It's why the late Arrow has a song about not leaving Montserrat. I have a cousin, Randy Grinaway, who's written some songs about Montserrat. There are people who are writing children's stories, their poetry anthologies. All of those things are critical. And if I split myself into, I'm a teacher at the university and I'm doing theatre and I'm trying to use the theatre to build advocacy, especially for women's issues. The other part of me is that I must be writing and talking about Montserrat. Must be. You know, what's her name? Chimamanda Adichie.
Yeah, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
She says she's not writing nothing else besides Nigeria, so why can't I write about Montserrat? So I think that's what we have to do, you know, with our photography, with our stories, our poetry, our research. So my next major research, which I'll be presenting, I think it's the University of Puerto Rico, stand corrected, is it's called The People Who Rode Back, like the conference I'm doing now. Healing and trauma through the arts. Healing, trauma through the arts. So that's my next piece of research, and I'm hoping to present it as a keynote in March 2020. And I'm hoping that when I go back to Barbados, I'll start doing that research, because it needs to be examined and it needs to be explored.
What does that gentleman mean to you?
Oh God, man, this is my buddy. You know, I remember being a young woman here, and he performed at, I can't remember the name of the place.
Where was it?
London.
North, east, south?
Commonwealth Institute? No, wouldn't have been there. He performed in London, and I was young. And I felt so proud of him, you know. And I think that was the first time I heard Hot, Hot, Hot as well. He's an icon, and he's a trailblazer to me. Arrow, a lot of people. I mean, I believe that art and soca has evolved. And sometimes I've heard, oh, Michelle made soca. Like, no, I mean, I love Michelle, but Arrow was singing calypso in the local calypso competitions, and then he started singing soca. He was the soca king. I didn't care about nobody else. He paved the way for the Marshalls, for the Bungees. Didn't need to say that. And the fans. I actually was in Trinidad once, and they said he was from Trinidad, and I was like, livid. No. Arrow was a Montserrat. Me know his family. I was close. I'm still close to his sisters. I know his nephews. Hello. So I think he was an extremely important. And it saddens me that we're not doing enough to ensure that his memory does not die. Montserrat Masquerade. When I went to Montserrat you don't need to know that. When I went to Montserrat, I did afraid of these masqueraders. Just the idea of the masks and the whips and the painted faces on these masks. But again, now I'm much older. You see this? My daughter-in-law, who has her own dance school, Tanisha, I said to her one day, I need for people to know about Montserrat. Can you and I work together and recreate the Montserrat Masquerade in Barbados? And there's a lot of YouTube, I got the music, I got the original music. It's not the same as having live musicians. And we have recreated the Montserrat Masquerade in Barbados. It's not the authentic masquerade, but when people saw the costumes for the first time, the ribbons flaring, and the children, it was mostly 8 to 18-year-olds, they were so fascinated. And that might be also some of the thing, that also might be something I want to make sure happens in Barbados, because we were on the front page because people had never seen it before. So yeah, I guess what I'm still doing, Daryl, is ensuring that Montserrat is alive wherever I go. So we've recreated these dances in Barbados.